a scholar sitting in the lab to finally conduct that experiment, right? So a student went in the laboratory, took help from someone, and then finally generated a result. And with that result, he came to the teacher and said, "Sir, I have carried out the experiment, and here is the final result." If you see this graph, this is not a straight line. This is not even exponential line. This straight line has got a deviation in between, has got a kink in between, has got some distortion in between. So the a scholar who has undertaken this result is a little apprehensive. He is not able to comprehend that there are some kinks, there are some deviations. How my boss will undertake this deviation, I am not aware, and then I should be a little passive about it. Let's start to understand that what is the meaning of this thing, what is the meaning of this deviation. So he goes to the teacher and say that I have carried out the experiment and here is the final result. He doesn't say that there is a deviation because he has got huge apprehension whether he will take in a positive sense or he will take in a negative sense. He is not a person of that background, that a scholar doesn't have any idea of this research domain, so he is not able to comprehend anything. And then you see the reaction of the guide, reaction of the teacher. The reaction of the teacher is that, stupid, why is there a deviation in the response? Use any plotting software and remove the data point so that we get a smooth graph. I need to publish results today. I need to publish result today itself, immediately. You can understand a new scholar who has just gone to the guide to take constructive input. If this is the way, if in this manner we conduct the research, possibly what will be the quality of the research paper and what will be talking of structuring your research paper, you can very well judge. I'm not telling you that everyone follow this approach. There are another approaches also, another approach. Many other good guides follow this particular approach, right? It is up to you to decide that which approach is better approach. So in the second approach, teacher to a student, take this data set, conduct experiment on MATLAB and test the final result. When you get meaningful result, then come back to me, take your own time. In the first case, the guide said to the student, I need result by today evening. And in the second case, the guide is telling to the student, when you get meaningful result, then come back to me, take your own time. These two lines give enough confidence to the scholar. And this sentence make a scholar more empowered, and then a scholar goes to the lab, then interacts with the people, conduct the experiment, understand that there are some deviations. Then he conducts some review of literature. He realizes that based on the review of literature, no other prior authors have highlighted this deviation. I'm noticing a deviation. Probably this deviation may become a turning point for our research. And if it is a correct deviation, if sir can help me to understand the meaning of this deviation, probably this deviation might undo the researches done by the fellow researchers in last 5 decades and might generate a new dimension of the research. So that much positivity is within the scholar. The moment he conducts this and the moment he undertakes the review of literature, he comes back with the same enthusiasm to the teacher, to the guide, and said that, sir, I have carried out the experiment and the final result is very interesting, sir, in which I have noticed a kink. I have noticed a deviation. I have noticed some deviation in the existing graph. And the moment the teacher, the guide, see the result, guide is over happy. He says that, well done, my dear boy. Focus on the region where you are getting deviation. You may reduce the intervals of the data point to improvise the data point so that the deviation becomes better and better. If it becomes more prominent than what it is at this moment, I'm visualizing an important application of this deviation in this graph. We can get it patented and then only publish a novel paper. Take your own time. That's the kind of approach which this guide is telling. Now it is up to you that which approach is better and which approach you should follow. But my sincere piece of advice to all of you, that if you are enrolled with some of the guide where the first approach is being followed, never ever try to change that approach. get your PhD degree, and then after, when you become a guide, never follow the first approach, follow the second approach. That's all my suggestion. That is based on the experience, but it is up to you to take decision whether the first approach will generate a quality result or the second approach will generate the quality result. This is also based on the mining of the paper and after interaction with many of the authors in last 15-16 years of maybe 50,000 plus papers, right? Now I will come back straight away on the topic, what is the research paper, right? And we are teachers, so we understand our everything in terms of our gross salary and net salary. You know what is a gross salary. You also know that after deductions, what's my net salary. So what I have done, mathematically, I have tried to define the research paper with having same analogy of gross information content and the net information content, right? So net information content is written in red. Net information content of your paper, that is I, is equal to the gross information content in your paper minus the relevant information in the references. Means gross information minus relevant information in the references will become the net information content, which is assumed as I. And if I is greater than, strictly greater than 0, then your paper makes a research contribution and is considered as a research paper. My dear friends, even if I is equal to 0 or I is less than 0 has got no meaning. Only if I is strictly greater than 0, then only it is going to be a research paper, and you should get value of that paper. You should get credit of that paper. That paper should be considered as part of your PhD research work. If your I is equal to 0, then this implies your paper doesn't make any research contribution, but yes, can be considered as a review paper, can be considered as a survey paper, right? And sometimes to begin with, this review paper and survey paper is also important, and you should go ahead. And particularly in terms of citations, the survey and the review papers will fetch much more citation than what actually the core research paper which you write in your own domain, only because of the fact that the readers for the survey and the review papers are huge as compared to the core research paper, because in core research paper only scholars of your domain will go through the paper, while as the survey paper and review papers, any research scholar connected to your domain, allied domain, might also go and they may start citing the paper. So you will get better citation for survey and review papers. So my suggestion to all of you, at least write 1 or 2 survey and review papers based on your research work, and then you come back straight away on your domain of the research, and then write the core research paper, which makes some sensible contribution. And many of the publishers, many of the journal do accept the review papers, do accept the survey papers, but not too much. Might be limited. If they publish 40 papers in one issue, maybe around 5 to 10 papers they may publish a survey or review paper. Rest 30-35 papers they might publish only the core research paper, right? So I think this is clear. But if I is strictly less than 0, then it might be a newspaper article, but not even a survey paper, not even a review paper. And you might need, as a research scholar, you might need to think, why are you writing this paper? That's my way of looking at this. You may differ with it. My dear friends, this particular flow chart you might have gone through, I will go through this quickly, is only tells you that what are different steps which any of the publisher follows for in order to review your paper from submission till final acceptance of the paper. I have circulated this slide. I have in fact sent this slide to Dr. Shikha, and she may circulate it to all the participants, and you may go through it. And if you find anything to be asked, any confusion, any clarity, you may write me on my WhatsApp or my email ID. I will share at the last of my lecture both the mobile numbers and my email ID, right? Now come back to that, how to structure your paper. And now again, these 8 factors which I have analyzed, these 8 factors are based on the huge data mining which I have undertaken, based on these 50,000 processing of 50,000 plus papers, and the analytics which have been generated have been categorized in 8 different categories. And if you follow or if you pay attention to these 8 factors while structuring your paper, while writing your paper, while expecting that your paper should not get outright rejected by the journals across the globe, then you must be careful about these 8 components. And to begin with, let me tell you that the review process which publishers are undertaking, which journals are undertaking, which conference organizers are undertaking, are for the purpose of finding reasons to reject a paper, not finding reasons to accept a paper. Because many of the good publishers have got less than 5 to 6% of the acceptance rate. So ideally, they find that if there is any reason to reject a paper, they keep on rejecting the paper, and in the process, they come across to some good papers which doesn't leave any reason to get rejected. So finally, that gets selected, and that goes under detailed review process and see the light of the day by its publication in in good and high impact journals, right? So the very first point now is the plagiarism, that is the similarity index report is more. If you are submitting a paper, all publishers have got the tools, software tools to check the similarity index. There are many tools, you might be aware. The de facto tool which publishers are following are either Authenticate or Turnitin. These are the two de facto tools using the same database. There are many other tools. UGCA is promoting Orkun, etc., maybe in paid domain, maybe in free domain. So these tools are used by the publishers. My suggestion to all of you that while writing paper and trying to submit the paper, so you must be careful that even if you do not have a license of any any proprietary tool with your university, with your department, then take help of some open access tools, some freely available tool to scan your paper and see to it that the similarity index, no tool will generate the plagiarism report. All tools generate the similarity index. That is altogether a different lecture. That it might be possible that a paper having 10% similarity index might be plagiarized, and the paper having 25% similarity index might not be plagiarized. That is altogether a separate lecture. But at this moment, just to make you to understand that whichever tool you are using, see to it that the similarity index should not be more than 10%. And or major ethical compliances should not be available in the paper. Major ethical compliance implies that if your paper is based on some sponsored project of maybe your university, or maybe from UGC, maybe from DST, maybe from any other funding agency, and in your entire paper you have not mentioned that you have taken permission to publish this result work, or you do not include that kind of permission form, then probably even if your paper is a novel paper will be rejected. So the two factors in the beginning, the similarity index, that is the plagiarism less than 10%, and if there are ethical compliances, you must address to those compliances. There are minor ethical compliances also, but in that case you might get opportunity to modify that, to improvise that during the process of revision. Minor ethical compliances could be that publishers come across to the situation that papers have been written by 4 authors, and everywhere you have used I did this, I did that, I come across to this situation, I noticed, I found a result. So you are writing paper in singularly, but you are projecting that there are 4 authors. So this implies there are some ethical compliances. Either there is one author, so your writing is correct, or you are wrongly using the singular noun. It must be a plural noun because there are 4 authors. Even this kind of ethical compliance is taken under notice by different publishers, right? But these are minor ethical compliances, but you must pay attention to this. Second important category is the prior papers in the same domain are not referenced. Probably why authors do that? We have analyzed this based on our analytics, and our analytics say that authors are aware of these published papers, the prior research papers of the same domain, maybe authored by themselves or maybe authored by other peer researchers, but they are not interested to cite those papers. They are not interested to refer those papers, only for one reason, that net information content I should remain strictly greater than 0. They are afraid that if they cite that those priorly published papers of the same domain in their paper, their net information content I will either become equal to 0 or will become strictly less than 0. In both the cases, their paper will not become a research paper and they may not get an opportunity. So they hide from the publisher by not citing these research papers, and they think that publisher will not come across the situation, will not be in a position to know this. My dear friend, you are mistaken. Publisher, the moment undertake a blind search, come across that these are 100 papers, these 100 papers under cascading impact or under chain referencing are covered under 10 papers, and none of these 10 papers have been cited or have been referred in your paper. So you are trying to hide something. Publisher or anyone on behalf of editor-in-chief who is doing this will immediately say that authors are doing some mischievous activity, trying to hide the prior published paper. And if the paper in the same domain has written by you and you have not referenced that, then they will be more unhappy that authors are doing some unethical and some mischievous activity. Let's reject paper outrightly, right? Third important factor is research methodology not explained explicitly. What I have named is not verifiable or unverifiable. What is unverifiable? What happens that the moment your paper is going for a detailed review, editor-in-chief is convinced that yes, this paper seems to be a good, promising paper, I must send it for the review process. And then they decide that they decide a reviewer, and then finally take consent from the reviewer, and then paper is sent to the reviewer. Say, for example, I am a reviewer of your paper. The moment paper comes to me, what I do, I assign it to any of the research scholar, maybe any one or two research scholar. Ask them to go to the laboratory and simulate the circuit, simulate the research methodology in our laboratory, give the data inputs and generate the result. If the result is the same result which in the research paper author has presented, this implies their research methodology all okay, their results are okay. Now we have to read the paper while reviewing it for the purpose of its presentation, for the purpose of its English, for the purpose of its consolidation of the results, etc., etc. But reviewer is convinced this paper is worth accepting, provided they undertake these suggestions if there are some mistakes in presentation, in English grammar, etc., etc. But at the same time, if the circuit is not, if the moment that research methodology is simulated in the lab and that result is not generated the way you have presented, or the result which you have presented is that reviewer is not getting that result, implies they will outrightly reject the paper. The third situation could be that you have not explained your research methodology in a self-explanatory manner. So the scholar who has been asked to simulate the research methodology or the circuit to generate the result are not in a position to simulate it or simulate or reproduce the circuit. So this implies the research methodology is not verifiable by a third person in the laboratory, cannot be reproduced, and then straight away he will come back and say that sir, he hasn't explained anything about research methodology. How can I simulate it? And the paper will get outrightly rejected. So let's be careful about it, that whatever research methodology you are writing, you must be clear enough. And while undertaking this analytics, while interacting with the authors after this mining process, we come across to a situation that authors are having apprehension that if they give the research methodology in a self-explanatory manner, or maybe in a verifiable manner, right in the paper itself, then probably someone else will generate the result and will publish the research paper, and this author research paper will remain pending. If that kind of fear factor you have, then my suggestion to all of you will be that first get your research methodology patented. First get your circuit patented, and then only come back for publication. But if you want to hide the research methodology, if you do not want to want someone to reproduce your research methodology, and still you publish a paper, that probably many of the good researchers will not allow. So that is the suggestion to all of you. Fourth important aspect is measured results are not presented. I have got a good results. Results are a state of the art. Results have got novelty, but I don't want to share result in the beginning, because first my research is a funded project. Second, if I share this result, someone else will include this result in his or her research, will publish a paper prior to me. Again, if this fear factor you have, and because of this you are not sharing the results, you are not presenting the result in the paper, my dear friends, you must first again go for the patenting, and after patenting you may come back for the publication. But you cannot publish a good paper with any of the reputed publisher without sharing, without presenting your actual measured results, right? Exactly in the same way, you have presented the result, but the result doesn't have any state of the art value. This result, many other prior authors have already published a better result than this. So your results are not a state of the art. Why as a publisher I should publish your paper? Because as a publisher, of course, my research interest is that I must help peer researchers to publish the paper. But my core interest as a publisher is in my business. And my journal will be purchased, my papers will be downloaded after paying some publication from reading fees from subscription charges by the authors, only when the results are a state of the art, only when it has got a value. If it doesn't have a value, I will be losing my business interest. And if publisher is losing its business interest, why publisher will publish your paper? That's my suggestion to all of you. You must at your level only ensure that your results are a state of the art, and in order to project your results are a state of the art, you have to project that your paper has got a novelty. Your paper is different in this way from all prior published papers. If you prove this, take it for granted your paper will be published. If you fail to prove this, that your paper has got a novelty, no publisher is going to publish paper. So results must be a state of the art, and the paper should have the novelty. Is the business interest of the publisher. And if you do not convince with the help of the data available in your paper to the publisher that your business interests are also being fulfilled, no publisher will accept the paper, right? Whatever claim you are making that your results are a state of the art, your paper is novel, you have done it differently than what the other people have done it. Even if your results are same what the other people have already done it, but approach of doing is different, and this approach is more optimal approach. This approach takes lesser computing. This approach takes lesser battery. Depending upon the domain, the resources consumed by this approach is more efficient than the earlier approach. Then also the paper result can be claimed as the state of the art, and the paper can be claimed as novel. But this claim must be supported by the data, must be supported by your result, and you may present it in your paper with the help of maybe a table, with the help of maybe some diagram, with the help of maybe some statistical tool, where you are presenting that these are the results of the prior published 3 approaches, and this is the result of my approach. And see, this approach is consuming much lesser resources as compared to what has been consuming earlier. So this is the claim which you need to support with the help of the comparison with the state of the art papers or state of the art technology or state of the art algorithms in the same domain. And lastly, poor grammar or poor use of English. We are Indians, we do commit mistakes, and that does not mean that with mistakes our paper will get accepted. So read twice, read thrice, and I will give you a few suggestions how to overcome with this problem. So these were the 8 different parameters on the basis of which whether your paper will see the light of the day, whether your paper will get accepted or your paper will get outrightly rejected. So you must pay attention to these 8 different parameters, right? Now quickly we'll take a glance, not detail, that how to structure your research paper, right? And the moment if you have not structured your research paper, then probably again the chances of your paper getting reviewed will be very less, right? So the very first component of your research paper is title. Suggestions which I am making again based on my personal experience of publication with IEEE and Springer, and I have in beginning only told you that you might differ with my views, but these are my views based on my own experiences. I may be wrong, right? So first is because upfront it's better to tell that you might differ, otherwise it will be a huge debate that this I don't accept and that I don't accept, right? Because this is based on my own experience. My experiences may be different than your experiences, right? So the first component of any research paper is title, and my suggestion is your title should be less than 12 words. You may think of 10 to 15 words to be more moderate, and the basic philosophy is your title must portray the concept given in entire paper, the research undertaken in entire paper, but at the same moment should not be a complete paragraph, right? That's the meaning of telling you that it should be less than 12 words, but more articulative, more catchy, and must be inclusive while talking about giving complete or portraying complete information, right? Abstract. You might have come across many review suggestions or review feedback from different journals that your abstract is not a structured. Please structure your abstract. What do you mean by a structured abstract? So when you are talking of a structured abstract, we are talking that you must talk about three things in your abstract. First is your what are you going to do? What's your problem? That you must mention maybe in 1 or 2 sentences, maybe in 3 sentences within your abstract, right? Then you must write at least 2-3 sentences or maybe 1 sentence if you feel that it is sufficient enough, that how have you undertaken this investigation? How have you undertaken this research? How have you arrived to this conclusion? So first is what's your problem? Second is what's your problem? How have you achieved the problem? And third, straight away, what is your result? What are your achievements? So these are the 3 input components which you must include in your abstract, and a general suggestion that the length of abstract should be 100 words to 300 words, and actual size will differ based on the paper, right? So if you include this, what aspect, how aspect, and actual result, the achievement aspect, your abstract will be considered as a structured abstract, right? Next important component, the third component, is your introduction, where your state of the art, where your review of literature will also come in. So it is said that this introduction should be between, of course, actual word length will differ from paper to paper, from domain to domain, but the ideal size which we have recommended for an entire paper of maybe around 6 to 8 pages, that 500 to 3000 words the introduction should be. And this is the hardest part and the most important part, and that's how we suggest that you might write a basic introduction for your paper in the beginning, but once you have completed the paper, come back to your introduction. So we say that write finally this introduction at the last, when you have completed everything in your paper, and see to it that is there any unnecessarily things which we have included in your introduction which doesn't have any relevance with your paper. If that is so, remove those aspects. And also to analyze, also to conduct an analytics, that is there something which should have been part of your paper and is missing in your introduction. If that is the case, please include that aspect, and ensure that your first paragraph states what the problem you are solving, and then from second paragraph to last paragraph you are talking about that what is the state of the art, means your review of literature. And then while doing that, it must say that this paper in which particular way will be different than the prior papers, in which particular way this paper will be in a position to address the research gaps, in which particular way, what are your research objectives, and in which way this research objective is going to meet to the research gaps, so that the research gaps which you have identified can well be addressed has well been addressed in your research, and that you have presented in your introduction. And that's how we say that finally, when you have completed writing your paper, go back to your introduction, see to it that is there any unnecessary thing, or is there something which is missing in whichever the case, you must complete it, right? And many papers are rejected because of the errors introduction, or maybe because of the poorly written introduction. So pay attention to this. Some participant is writing, very kindly share PPT. My dear friend, Dr. Shikha has got a copy of this PPT, and you may request her to circulate with all of you, right? I might need to skip few parts because of the time constraints. I have got around 30 minutes. I will finish it in next 15-20 minutes, so that you may ask questions if you have in next 10-15 minutes, right? So the fourth important components of your paper is research methodology and technical content. My dear friends, I have already spoken on this, that unless your research methodology is self-explanatory in a manner that any third person at the reviewer end can reproduce it and generate and cross-verify the result, your research paper is not going to be accepted, right? So write research methodology. And I have also sensitized you that if you have any apprehension, any fear factor of being copied and someone else will publish this based on their data point, so probably you should go first to get it patented and then come back for the publication. But this fear factor will not work it. So only one thumb rule is, whatever research methodology, reviewer is not going to change your research methodology. Reviewer is not going to change your result. Reviewer is going to might say you that research methodology is not a state of the art. You have whatever you have applied the circuit, that circuit is very old, Our circuit doesn't give that kind of desired value addition in this domain. But whatever research methodology you are proposing must be presented in a self-verifiable manner, so that the result which you are claiming should get reproduced at the end of the reviewer, and then immediately reviewer will get convinced, oh yes, it's a great paper. If I can generate the same result, this implies the author has really done marvelous work. And then the reviewers will be going deep into the text of your paper to find some input, some constructive input suggestions to be given to you. So that should be your concern while writing the research methodology. And of course, no word length we have specified for the reasons obvious to you. That depends upon the work, whether it is a hypothetical hypothesis-based paper, is a question-based paper, is a lab-based paper, is a simulator. So based on that, you will have to take decision that how long should be the section of the research methodology. Conclusion. The fifth important part of your paper. You might have one or two other components, but these are some important components which might be in all cases present in your paper, right? You can't afford to skip any of these components which I'm talking here. The fifth component is conclusion. And my dear friends, most of the errors which we encounter and which we have seen after having analysis of maybe around 50,000 plus papers which I have referring since beginning, that the authors do not know the differences between abstract and conclusion. My dear friends, the difference between abstract and conclusion is something like the difference between synopsis and abstract, right? When you undertake to do a PhD, you write a synopsis, and when you complete doing the PhD, then you write your abstract, right? So exactly in the same way, when you are starting your documenting your paper, you are writing your abstract, and when you complete documenting your paper, then you write a conclusion. And you have to start conclusion from the point from where you have left it in your abstract. Where had you left in the abstract? At your achievement. There were three questions to be addressed in your abstract. First, what the problem is. Second, how have you undertaken the research related to this problem? And third, what actual the result you have generated? What was your achievement? Now you have to start from what the result you have generated. And in this conclusion, you have to write at least 2-3 lines which should prove that your result is state of the art and the paper is not. Because many times, maybe around 80% plus times, could be even 90% plus, that the reviewers, even the editor-in-chief, while taking decision that whether to get this paper reviewed in a detailed manner or reject this paper outrightly, the decision will be taken only on the basis of what the abstract you have written and what the conclusion is. I will tell you even that many times even the editor-in-chief doesn't go to that abstract and conclusion and takes decision whether the paper is to be reviewed or not to be reviewed on the basis of only 2 parameters, that is your title of the paper and references available in the paper. So I always tell people that there are 4 important components you must take into consideration. One is your title of the paper. Second is your abstract of the paper. Third, your conclusion of the paper. Fourth, your reference of the paper. And the order in which you must pay attention is: first is title, second is reference. So TR, T stands for title, R stands for reference, and then comes to your abstract, and then comes to your conclusion. So TRAC, track is a basic thumb rule. If you pay attention to the track, believe me, never ever your paper will get outrightly rejected. And even if you write huge technical content, your paper is very good. But if you have not taken care of these 4 components like track, the title, the reference, your abstract, and your conclusion, it is all probability that your paper might get outrightly rejected, maybe on the same day. And then you keep on cursing. You keep on cursing to the editorial board, to the editor-in-chief, to the publisher, to the journal. क्या रिव्यू करते हैं ये जी, मेरा पेपर सेम डे रिजेक्ट कर दिया इन्होंने, इन्हें पता ही नहीं मेरे पेपर में कितनी नॉवेल्टी थी। अरे भाई, आपके पेपर की नॉवेल्टी है ये एक्सेप्टेड, लेकिन आप अपने पेपर की नॉवेल्टी इन पैसिव वे आपको प्रोजेक्ट करनी है 4 चीजों की हेल्प से। सो मैंने ये बताया कि कंक्लूजन वहां से शुरू होगा जहां एब्स्ट्रैक्ट छोड़ा है आपने, और यहां आपको 50 से 250 वर्ड में सजेस्ट करता हूं. You may differ and have some moderate view of maybe 300, 400 up to, but do not write lengthy conclusions. Why? Again, for the simple reason that editor-in-chief has to take decision within 5 to 10 minutes about your paper. It doesn't have more than 10 minutes time to take a decision whether to get this paper accepted, get this paper reviewed in a detailed manner for final decision, or reject it outrightly. He will not send all papers for detailed review. So within that 10 minutes, 5 to 10 minutes, if you can take decision with the help of track that yes, your paper is worth reviewing and I should send it, I should invite reviewers, then you made a point. Then you made a point, and now it is absolutely based on your technical content in the paper whether your paper will see the light of the day or not. And again, in that, the research methodology written in a self-explicatory manner will contribute a lot. So for that purpose, this title, references, abstract, and conclusion can well be glanced through within 10 minutes. That should be your approach. That's how I'm telling that you must write as precise as possible, but never ever leave anything which is required to be added. Then comes references, and references very important, because reference is the second point which is paid attention by editor-in-chief at the time to decide whether the paper should get a detailed review or not. So put ref papers in context with prior work. I have already addressed this point. If reporting a state-of-the-art result, references should be used for comparison. कि ये 4 पेपर जो मैंने प्रायर रिसर्च के सबमिट किए हैं, उनका रिजल्ट ये है, मेरा रिजल्ट ये है, and the table clearly shows that my result is 1.002% better than in terms of memory consumption, in terms of the resource utilization, and you may enumerate all those resources which we are referring to. So better than the papers available, and then you refer that, right? And also please keep in mind that newer references with latest results must be preferred on the older references. So अगर आप एक डेटा माइनिंग में पेपर लिख रहे हैं, अगर आप से फॉर एग्जांपल डीप लर्निंग में पेपर लिख रहे हैं, अगर आप पेपर कोई एक कन्वोल्यूशनल नेटवर्क पे लिख रहे हैं और आप कोई 20 साल पुराना सिर्फ रेफर कर रहे हैं, तो यू आर मिस्टेकन. आपको लेटेस्ट पिछले 4-5 सालों की रिजल्ट दिखानी चाहिए, और आप ऐसी कोशिश करें कि जो आप कोई बहुत बड़ा बेंचमार्क या कोई बहुत नोवेल काम जो 20 साल पहले हुआ था इस डोमेन में, उसको भी आप रेफर करना चाहते हैं, तो वो पेपर किसी भी आपके प्रायर रिसर्चेस ने पिछले 5 साल में रेफर किया होगा, आप उस पेपर को रेफर कर दें इन कैस्केडिंग मैनर, दैट विल गेट रेफरेंस, राइट? सो न्यूअर रेफरेंसेस मस्ट बी गेटिंग प्रेफरेंस ऑन ओल्डर रेफरेंसेस. दैट इज योर फर्स्ट point, and provide supplementary information as part of these references. There is no need to repeat well-known ideas, equations, or facts in your paper. Sun is rising from the east is a well-known fact. You need not to cite Newton, or you need not to cite Einstein, or you need not to give that reference where that paper was published. So that is a universally accepted phenomena, universally accepted fact. And then few helpful hints. Hints are that very first, if you are writing a paper for X journal, you must pay attention of going through the archive, means prior published papers in that journal, and see to it that you find 5 to 10 papers from your own domain which have been referenced in this, which have been published in that journal. And out of that 5 to 10 papers which you have reviewed, which have from your domain published in that journal, see to it that you must refer 2-3 papers in that particular, in your own paper, because if you have referred 2-3 papers, the very first decision which editor-in-chief will try to take is that paper well within the scope of my journal. That question will get answered by yes. The moment the editor-in-chief see that yes, there are 3 papers, there are 5 papers from my own journal which have been referred here, the question of deciding whether it is well within the scope of my journal, this new paper or not, doesn't arise now. So you made a point there, and your paper is well within the scope of the journal. Second, editor-in-chief will get a kind of inherent interest in your paper, because he is visualizing that if this paper is accepted after review and get published in my journal, they have already referred 5 papers from my journal, so the 5 citations are increasing, and by a new author, not self-citation. So 5 new citations will be coming. So he will make it a point that the POU paper is not outrightly rejected and will give you enough opportunity to revise your paper to make it to the level which the journal is publishing, and then only he will accept the paper. Will not get accept without revision. That doesn't happen with giving references, but we'll see to it that because it is not only your interest, it is now the interest of the editor-in-chief as well. So this is a very helpful hint. Many of the publishers even will write after the paper is completely revised and acceptance notification is sent to you that these are the this is the link where archive of my publication is available. Go through this, see to it that if you find 5 to 10 references, please do refer 2-3 references of my publication in your paper, because that helps them to improvise the citation. Citation helps them to improvise the impact factor, and there's a whole business which no one can deny, right? Second helpful hint, I've already spoken, track the title, reference, abstract, and conclusion. So write in the best possible manner, and have all co-authors read the paper to make the revision, because if you have written English poorly, if you have omitted something, if you have missed something, if you are, have written something extra in the introduction, you may be the co-writer of the paper. Many other co-authors, if we'll go through, then probably they will find out those mistakes and will highlight it to you. And then before submitting it to the journal and getting outrightly rejected, have any of your friend who is not the co-author of this paper, means non-author, read the paper. And possibly the non-author should be good from the language side, so that even if you have committed some mistakes in the English, he must help you to improvise the paper. So have any non-author also to read the paper. Next helpful hint is run your software, run your paper on some plagiarism software. Plagiarism software is a wrong word. In fact, some software which identifies similarity index, right? So, and ensure that it's less than 10%, and then only you submit the paper. And take care of all ethical compliances, whether it's a major compliance, it's a minor compliance. I have already spoken about this. And you see, many times the papers are rejected just because of the plagiarism. See, this is one of the copy of the email, the screenshot of the email, which I keep on receiving on daily basis from the editorial assistants of my Springer team, who keeps me assisting, who keeps me giving analytics. And see the kind of the analytics which I receive from my editorial office located at Singapore of Springer Nature. And they say that on a specific day, say for example on June 13, 2017, they received 11 paper for my journals. On one day, they received 11 paper which have been processed. And after processing those 11 papers, they have categorized papers in 4 groups. And see, the recommendation, the clerical level staff, not clerical level, in fact, they are intelligent technical guys, maybe BTech people or some science graduates. And they are suggesting me that out of 11 papers, we have not found any paper in OK to proceed category, sir. They are writing it to me. Decision will be mine. But what they are writing that out of 11 papers processed on June 13, 2017, I have not got even a single paper to be placed in the category OK to proceed, right? Second category is do not proceed. They are warning me, they are sending me an alert. Sir, there is a paper. और अगर इसके साथ में एक डिटेल अटैचमेंट होती है, उस पर क्लिक करूंगा, जो यहाँ आपको मैंने पीडीएफ दिखाई है, तो वो पेपर हाईलाइटेड होगा रेड से, डू नॉट प्रोसीड, इस पेपर में मेजर प्रॉब्लम है, इसे मत प्रोसीड कीजिए। फिर वो मुझे कहते हैं कि 3 पेपर ऐसा है जिसमें रिवीजन्स हैं, और रिवीजन्स के बाद वो पेपर हम वेल कंसीडर कर सकते हैं। तो वो रिवीजन बेसिक रिवीजन्स हैं जो वो अपने लेवल पे एडिटोरियल ऑफिस करेगी और तब मुझे भेजेगी, ठीक है। कुछ कंप्लायंसेस फॉर्म्स वगैरह नहीं सबमिट किए होंगे। और 7 पेपर्स को उन्होंने कैटेगरी में डाल दिया जहां वो क्लैरिफिकेशंस है। क्लैरिफिकेशंस का मतलब है कि सिंगुलर ऑथर है, प्लूरल ऑथर है, माइनर एथिकल कंप्लायंसेस है, या कुछ है उनको डाउट दिख रहा है, ऑथर की एफिलिएशन नहीं लिखी हुई है, ऑथर की डिटेल्स नहीं लिखी हुई है, या ऑथर ने पेपर को ऑर्किड अपने आईडीज के साथ कनेक्ट नहीं किया, ऐसी कुछ चीजें हैं। तो इसका मतलब है कि जून 13 को जो पेपर 11 प्रोसेस हुए, एज एन एडिटर इन चीफ मुझे कुछ नहीं करना, अभी मेरी एडिटोरियल ऑफिस सिंगापुर में पेपर प्रोसेस कर रही है। और बिलीव मी, ऑथर पेपर सबमिट करता है, अगले दिन मुझे मेल या किसी से फोन कराता है और कहता सर मैंने पेपर सबमिट किया, ये आईडी है, जरा ध्यान रखिए। आपका पेपर मेरे पास आते आते एडिटर इन चीफ के डैशबोर्ड पे, स्प्रिंगर का जो हमारा डॉक्यूमेंट सेंट्रल पोर्टल है उसके डैशबोर्ड पे आते आते कभी कभी महीना लग जाता है, और वो आईडी मुझे दिखती नहीं है जब तक कि ये एडिटोरियल ऑफिस उसे कंप्लीट नहीं करती है। आउटराइटली मुझे चाहिए तो मैं इसमें से रिव्यू समरी रिपोर्ट देख के लिख सकता हूं कुछ, अच्छा, वो नीचे साथ में ये भी मुझे कह रहे हैं, देखिए आप नीचे थैंक यू मेल से पहले कि ऑथेंटिकेट से रिपोर्ट जनरेट की गई है, जो आप डाउनलोड करके देख सकते हैं सर, लिंक लगा है। बिब्लियोग्राफी को एक्सक्लूड कर दिया गया है और लेस देन 20 वर्ड्स के मैचेस को भी एक्सक्लूड कर दिया गया है। इसका मतलब आपके लिए एनफ क्यू है, इस यहां से एनफ क्लू है कि अगर आप किसी सिमिलरिटी इंडेक्स के सॉफ्टवेयर पे अपना पेपर स्कैन कर रहे हैं तो अप टू 20 वर्ड्स मैचेस आप भी एक्सक्लूड कर सकते हैं, मतलब अप टू 19 वर्ड्स, लेस देन 20 वर्ड्स का मतलब है। एंड ऑथेंटिकेट यूज किया गया है और बिब्लियोग्राफी को इंक्लूड करने की जरूरत नहीं है। ये इस तरह की मैसेजेस आती हैं, रिपोर्ट्स भी आती हैं। मेरे पास टाइम होता तो शायद मैं आपको दिखाता। मेरा अगला मैसेज टू ऑल ऑफ यू कि ये 21st सेंचुरी है, यहाँ हमें सारे सोशली कनेक्टेड प्लेटफॉर्म से कनेक्टेड रहना है, तभी हम नेटवर्क के टीचर बनेंगे, तभी हम नेटवर्क के स्टूडेंट बनेंगे अपने डोमेन के। और जिन सोशल नेटवर्किंग साइट्स को हमारा आप समझते थे कि ये सिर्फ सोशल नेटवर्किंग चिट चैट के लिए है, these sites can become your huge platform for your very good productive research work. So you may form your own group on Twitter, on LinkedIn possibly, particularly, and then also on Facebook, depending upon the common groups. And before I end with this message, that failure is not when you fall down, but when you fail to get up. So अभी तक जो कुछ हमने किया उसको चेंज करने की जरूरत है, अगर जरूरत फील हो रही है। एंड कब चेंज करना है? नाउ। सक्सेस इज नॉट व्हेन यू सक्सीड टू गेट अप, बट हाउ क्विकली यू गेट अप। सो इमीडिएटली यू हैव टू डू दैट। These were the references which I have used during my for preparation of my PPT, and this is my contact detail. If you have any WhatsApp group, you may include me in the WhatsApp group. These are my email IDs. You will get quicker response on my official email ID, which is the first one, and the second email ID is my personal email ID. My response may be delayed, and I would love to now take up the questions which you have. Few questions I can see in the chat window. I will take it up first, and then you can unmute the your mic and then ask questions directly as well. And after this session, if you feel that there are some questions, there are some queries, and you want some input on that, you want some clarification on that, I will be more than happy. If you write particularly on my WhatsApp or my email ID, I will be happy to do that. So now I will first stop sharing my PPT so that I can pay attention properly on the chat window screen, and then take up your questions. So sharing PPT, my dear friends, I've already told that I have shared the PPT, which you may ask Dr. Shikha, and she will help you out. And second, please tell me how to write a review paper. My dear friend, review paper is a paper which you write in your own words based on review, based on the survey undertaken by you of the same papers published in the same domain. And many times when you write the review, actually I suggest people to keep a tabular presentation. So all parameters, say for example, you decided 15 parameters on the basis of which you will be reviewing your prior published papers. So all those 15 parameters will be in column. And say for example 20 papers or 40 papers you are reviewing, so all those 40 papers will be in rows. So there will be 41 rows including a title row, and there will be 21 columns including the title column, and then all those papers must be written in that 20 column. And you must find out the gap, because once you are writing a review paper, you must find out a gap, and then you propose that these are my methods, these are my ways which I am proposing for my future research, right? And thank you so much for writing. Nice information, good presentation. Is there any difference? Ella is asking me, is there any difference between review and survey papers? Depending upon the domain, there may remain some differences, but at this moment, for the purpose of simplicity, you assume that both are same papers, right? Survey papers primarily, if it is a management science, then they consider survey paper differently and review papers differently. But in most of the times in computer science or in pure sciences, we do not undertake too much survey. We basically believe either on conducting experiments or conducting some simulator-based exercises, and we consider them same. All right. Good presentation. Can we publish our paper? Can we publish our published paperwork for patent? Of course, you may go for patenting, but see to it that you will have to prove the novelty. And that's how we mostly, if it is your paper which has been published and then you are going for patent, you can do that. But mostly the patent office will see that no such work has been done by anyone else out, except you in that particular domain. And we suggest that if your work is worth patenting, the patent will have more value addition in your professional life than publishing a paper. And believe me, though I'm associated with a publication since last 15-16 years, I have myself established a journal which from scratch has come to a level that now it is published by Springer Nature and indexed at a Scopus, and is considered among the top 50 journal of the Springer in mathematical and computer science domain. But despite that, I'm telling you that this publication business is not going to work for more than 5 years. If very moderate and very liberal, I'm then also not more than 1 decade. So the coming days are first patent, and patent business will also not last for more than maybe 15-20 years. So you may need to go for a product, and that is where we say it is a translational research. So you may need to undertake, you should rather undertake such problems which first get patented, then get published, and then you enter into MOU, then you enter into discussion with some good research R&D laboratory, which should help you for transfer of your technology, means technology transfer, so that some working product or some working version is available in the market. So that is the future. So the future first is patent, and the second is your product or services available in the market. And that is what we say as a translational research. If you are not believing in translational research, then probably you are mistaken, and maybe earlier 5 years or more liberal 10 years, the business of paper publication will go away, right? Feedback link organizers will give you. Sir, any point to consider while selecting the journal? Yes, of course. If you are writing a review paper, you may publish in any journal, right? Maybe journal with generic domain. But if you are writing a core paper, say machine learning, then you go to the Scopus site, go to the SEI site, wherever you want to hit your journal, and see to it that which are the top 20 journals in machine learning, which are the top 20 journal in computational sciences, which are the top 20 journals in AI, which are the top 20 journal in image recognition. And you write me on my WhatsApp, I will share you the Scopus link where they publish for every journal different categories. And then you should focus at least the top 50 journals, any journal out of the top 50 journal, out of that categorization from such abstracting and indexing agencies, maybe Scopus, maybe ACI, etc. We are Scopus index since last 4 years, so now we are aspiring for ACIE indexing. Maybe a year later we will be filing our application for ACIE, and that's how we are little restrictive at this moment for review and survey papers, because we wanted more scientific papers should come up, so that should help us to get indexed at ACI publication, because ACI is ultimate goal for any publication, right? And how to very informative session. Thank you so much, Vijay Lakshmi. How to change the paper and give a template for journal. This I have not come across to this situation. You may find the template of the journal and then do that. In our case, we ask authors to submit paper single column, 10 font size, no formatting at all. Because after the paper is accepted, our acceptance rate is not more than 6%. So after the paper is accepted, there is a team in Springer which is known as a production team, and production team will undertake the formatting process, typesetting process, so that the symmetry across the papers, across the journal should remain same. And the production team will remain in close coordination with the author, and after typesetting will get the proofread done by the author, and then finally finalize the paper. So we do not want authors to format the paper, right? If there are journals, particularly IEEE journals, they expect papers to be submitted in a specific format, and most of the journals have got a common format of IEEE, so you may review that for your own interest, right? Plagiarism check is applied on full paper, reference also included, depends upon the publisher. In my publication, abstract added but reference is excluded, and matches up to 20 words are excluded. That I have shown you in my report. But it depends upon publisher to publisher. So few publishers include it, few doesn't include it. But general practice in the industry, publication industry, is excluded. Reference is excluded, right? And please understand that like our journal is a free journal, we do not charge money for initial 6 pages of your paper to be typeset by Springer, not by you. आपका 7 पेज का पेपर आप छोटा छोटा करके अगर आप 6 पेज में अकोमोडेट करेंगे और मुझे कहेंगे कि ये एक्सेप्ट कीजिए, तो ऐसा नहीं होता। चूंकि मैंने बताया फॉर्मेटिंग स्प्रिंगर करता है, तो स्प्रिंगर की फॉर्मेटिंग के बाद 6 पेज का अगर पेपर है तो आपका पेपर सॉफ्ट कॉपी, हार्ड कॉपी सब कुछ फ्री होगा, 1 रुपए आपको चार्ज नहीं देना, नो प्रोसेसिंग फीस इवन। बट इफ योर पेपर एक्सीड्स the page length from the 6 pages after typeset by our Springer team, then we charge 2,000 rupees per page for additional 4 pages, and we do not prefer papers having length more than 10 pages, because for the reason that if we accept 20 pages paper, possibly we'll be doing injustice to many of the authors whose papers length is 6, 7, 8, 10 papers, because the total number of papers published will become too less, right? So we prefer, of course, the shorter paper as compared to the older paper, and the purpose of keeping the extra page charges EPC after 6 free pages are also that, so that we should encourage authors to write smaller papers, right? For longer papers, there are many other journals, even IEEE journals, Elsevier journal, Wiley journals, they publish big papers. You can do that, and many of the journals now have entered into both the domain, subscription domain, as well as open access domain. If you want to publish your paper in subscription domain, only abstract of your paper will be visible to the readers. Full paper, if readers wanted to access, they will have to make payment and download the paper, or otherwise if they have their subscription in their library, then they can download the paper like IEEE journals. But on the other hand, if you want that I want my paper to be freely accessible by any reader across the world, so that if they read, more readers read your paper, they will cite your paper, and your paper will fetch more citations. For more citations, you will have a more H-index, and then you can have more research impact, the way many of the abstracting and indexing agencies like Scopus, like Elsevier, like Wiley are releasing top 2% scientists, top 3% scientists, top 10% scientists, etc. And you want to make your presence there, then you have to pay to even these subscription journals, so that the investment done in your paper by the publisher is recovered from you, and then after recovering this, then your paper is put into the open access domain, and anyone and everyone can refer your paper. In our case, if you are publishing paper in a Springer journals, particularly in our journal, up to, for soft copy, no charges, for including hard copy and including in any issue 6 pages, no charges. It is free of cost. But if it is in subscription domain, right? So only abstract will be visible to the readers. If you want that your entire paper should be available to the reader, then you will have to make payment, and for that $2,800 they plus taxes applicable in US, they charge from the authors, and then only they put your paper in open access domain, right? Of course, what is the difference between EACI, ACIE and ACIE? It's a long discussion. ACI, you all know, Science Citation Index, now has been taken up. Earlier it was Thomson Reuters, now has been taken by the climate analysis, and many merger acquisitions keep on happening. One E is emerging, one E is extended, and at this moment no journal is directly put into ACIE. If it is scientific journal, scientific, I mean the computational domain, mathematics, computer science, it is put in ACIE. If it is very new and emerging journals, it is put in EACI. But you can go through that website to get entire detail of EACI, ACI, and ACIE. But for you, my suggestion is, if your paper has been published even in ACIE, you can claim it is an ACIE journal, because at this moment no new journal is placed into ACIE. So for you, all three are same, one and the same like ACIE, right? And you will get an impact factor. Like my journal is with Scopus. Scopus parallel to impact factor release cite score. So I do not have an impact factor for my journal, but I have a cite score. Impact factor is released by this earlier Thomson Reuters. Now this climate analysis releases it. So my journal is not indexed there, so I can't claim an impact factor for that. Research should publish paper in journal or conferences. My suggestion, review paper you publish in conference. In fact, the difference between the two is journal publication will fetch more value addition as compared to the conference publication. But no quality journal will be in a position to publish your paper prior than 6 months. We claim 3 to 12 month cycle to publish your paper. Means even first review, or maybe the first comment which you listen from our side might take about 3 months time. And in case of conference, you may get review in just 10 days, 15 days. Even our conferences will give you review in less than a month time. So if you want a quick publication, maybe you have a ready review paper or ready survey paper, or even if your research paper, short paper, and you wanted that to be put in a public domain with some publisher, so that some feedback, some constructive suggestions come to you, some citations come to you, will motivate you, will boost your morale for the purpose of undertaking and completing your research, you may go for a conference, right? But if you want actually to get complete value addition and make a full sense of your research contribution, you must go for the journal. It is up to you to take decision, right? Then come next. Thank you. Feedback link. Link is not working. Please provide in group. Thank you so much for your valuable guidance. Nice session. Thank you so much. And it was a very learning session talking to all of you. And I was thinking that questions will not come so many because of being online, but I could see 20 plus questions and very good questions, very interesting questions. So thank you so much. And the credit of this goes to my friend Dr. Shika, who gave me this opportunity to interact with all of you. I thought that this FDP is on AI and machine learning, and I will be talking that how AI helped me to analyze the common mistakes of the authors, and how analytics helped me to find out those good and successful factors which can go a long way, particularly for the new researchers to write and structure their paper and get the probability of at least not getting outrightly rejected and getting accepted. So thank you so much to all of you. Anyone wanted to unmute and say something, you are most welcome to do that. And with this note, I would like to conclude that from my side here, that this entire process of teaching, learning, and what I have discussed with all of you is to bring light from darkness, is to bring knowledge from ignorance. एंड नॉलेज को शायर कहता है कि पावर ऑफ नॉलेज हमेशा एक दिन के उजाले की तरह है, रोशनी की तरह है, और अगर इग्नोरेंस ऑफ नॉलेज है, डार्कनेस है, तो शायर कहता है हमेशा कि ये अंधेरे की तरह है. सो जो एनालॉजी दी गई है वो नॉलेज को लाइट से एंड इग्नोरेंस को डार्कनेस से, समझ रहे हैं? तो इस एनालॉजी के बैकड्रॉप में, चूंकि एआई हमेशा सिंबॉलिक प्रोसेसिंग है, एनालॉजी पे बेस्ड है, इंटेलिजेंट डोमेन हमारा ये एक्सप्लिसिटली नहीं होता, ये सिंबॉलिक प्रोसेसिंग होती है. तो इस पे ग्रेट पोएट ने कहा है, उजाले अपनी आंखों में महफूज कर लो, मींस कीप पावर ऑफ नॉलेज as integral part of your professional life, as integral part of your personality. उजाले अपनी आंखों में महफूज कर लो, बड़ी दूर तक रात ही रात होगी. चैलेंजेस बहुत होंगे in absence of knowledge. So उजाले अपनी आंखों में महफूज कर लो, बड़ी दूर तक रात ही रात होगी. मुसाफिर हो तुम भी, मुसाफिर हैं हम भी, किसी मोड़ पे फिर मुलाकात होगी. Thank you so much, my dear friends. Wish you all the best and wish you very happy Deepavali and all connected festivals which is coming from next week onwards. And it was my pleasure talking to all of you. God bless you all. Stay safe, stay healthy, and stay vibrant. Keep learning despite disruptions around us. Thank you so much. Over to you, Dr. Shika and organizing team.
Thank you so much, sir. It was really a very wonderful session and I enjoyed it a lot, and lots of knowledge we all gained from your session. And as you rightly said, there are so many questions. This itself indicates that the audience was live in your session and they enjoyed it, and definitely they got very good knowledge about how to write a good research paper. And this is the need of today's, because we all are guiding our PhD student. Most of the faculties are also doing PhD, and we don't get such kind of a mentoring, that what is the mechanism of writing a good paper, why we are getting rejections from our paper. So that Mathli, please mute yourself. So definitely, sir, आपका जो session था, it was really very knowledgeable. At least I learned a lot from this session. Yes, sir. और जैसा कि आपने कहा कि मुसाफिर हैं, आप भी मुसाफिर हैं, हम भी, and definitely we want you to come again and again in our sessions and benefit us from your knowledge.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, sir. Wishing you a happy Diwali. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. And you know, when Dr. Shikha rings me up or inform me that you have to participate in our FDP, I can't say no to Dr. Shikha, right?
So nice of you, sir. Thank you
Thanks.
so much. Thank you. Thank you, all the participants. And in
I
the
would
next session, yes, anybody wants to say anything?
just vote of thanks I would like to give, ma'am.
Oh, great.
Okay, Madhuri, you can go.
On behalf of RGPV, I extend a really hearty vote of thanks to our expert, Dr. M.N. Honda sir, who spared time from his busy schedule to grace the occasion. Today, we had an opportunity to hear your thoughts on the art of intelligence writing the research paper. What is a research paper? The approach to write a research paper, common mistakes that are leading to for rejection of a paper, how to structure a well-organized paper, and what are the helpful hints for writing a research paper. This will surely be going to encourage us in our future events and for our research. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Oh, thank
I
you
would
so
like,
much. And now I'm leaving the meeting. Huh?
yeah. Thank you so
Okay.
much, sir.
Okay.
Yeah. Good day, sir. So all the participants, next session will start from 2:30. So you all are requested to join the session from 2:25. It will be taken by Dr. Sandeep Raghuvanshi, and that will be on convolution neural network, as you all know. And one more thing, that link will be posted in this chat window only during the session or after the session, and it will not be posted on the WhatsApp group. So you all are requested to join this session. If you are not in the session, you will not be able to mark your attendance. So be on time. Please attend this session, because this will surely enhance your knowledge. I would like to thank Madhuri, Umesh, and all my team members for conducting this session. And thank you, participants, for joining us. Okay, we will see you on at 2:30. Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am.
Hello. Okay, welcoming all in the Thursday last session of today. Am I audible? Please respond.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. You are audible.
Sandeep, sorry, Shirish sir, Shirish Mohan.
Yes, sir.
Dubey ji,
Yes, sir.
to start the session, please.
Yes, sir. Very good afternoon to all. I am Shirish Dubey. Welcome to Sandeep Kumar Raghuvanshi sir. Dr. Sandeep Kumar Raghuvanshi sir, that are work in assistant professor in Smart Ashok Technological Institute, Vidisha, MP. And he possesses an experience of more than 15 years in academic and teaching. And during his career, he equally involved in teaching and administrative responsible at institute level. Also work as a mentor and the consultants of both professors and to accomplish their goals. His main expertise come from the field of statistics, machine learning, data science, and also and Python. And he also plays supported role in the content development for various corporate training programs. He received his doctorate degree in the field of information retrieval from Maulana Azad National Institute of Technology. And he has published more than 25 publications in various journals and conference of repute in international level. And he also holds 2 patents for his work and applications in the agriculture fields. And he is also a member of the editorial board and the reviewer for many conferences and international journals. With this, he is also highly skilled as a teacher and a trainer and has extensive knowledge of the latest and the most effective teaching methods. And he is fully dedicated to classroom and long-term student success, where his belief is in establishing a conducting environment by emphasizing more and character and the attitude buildings than the subjects he teaches. So welcome, Mr. Sandeep Kumar Raghuvanshi, sir. Sir, please, going on. For
Thank you. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you.
Sir.
So shall we start?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Definitely. Yes, sir. Definitely.
Okay. So let me share my screen and please do let me know if you can see it. Is it visible?
Yes, sir, it's visible.
Yes, sir. It is visible.
Okay, thank you. So in this session, I would like to share one hands-on exercise on convolution neural network with image classification. We know that the CNN is become the state-of-art technology to do this computer vision problems or to use in the image classification kind of problem solving. So in today's session or in this particular session, we'll talk about what is image, how it is represented in computers, and what are the challenges of fully connected or dense networks. So we cannot use these fully connected networks to do image classification, and then solution comes in the way of image convolution neural network. So we'll try to understand various building blocks of convolution neural network, and at the same time, we try to implement all these concepts using Python, where we'll try to solve one image classification problems or flower classifications, like we will see it later on. So the agenda will go like we'll try to understand what is an image and what are the characteristics of an image, especially when it comes to represent it in the memory. And then what are the challenges of image classification, especially when we use computer to do this job, and how convolution help us to face those challenges, and what is the convolution and what are the building block of convolution neural networks. And lastly, like we'll try to implement this convolution neural network to do this image classification. So let's start with this very first introduction of what is an image and how it is represented. So you can see it on my screen, like this is an image, and basically in the computer, the image is represented as a matrix of some integer or real numbers, you can say that. So generally that image is represented in the form of a matrix, where this matrix is defined by the resolution of image, where the resolution is defined by the number of pixels present in a particular image.
And sometimes these pixels are arranged in row and column manner. So you can see that if we take this small part of that image that you can see on the face of this particular cat, now this small part can also be represented with this two-dimensional matrix that you can see on this right side. So when we talk about how computer sees the images, so basically computer sees the images in the form of numbers, and generally these numbers are ranges from 0 to 255. There is a reason that why we use this 0 to 255, because generally we use 1 byte representations to store these values. So with respect to this 1 byte capability, we can have this range from 0 to 255. And generally computer images are classified into two sectors. One we call as a grayscale image, and second we call them as a color images. Grayscale images, mostly we call them black and white images, where it comes only with a single channel. On the other hand, if you have a color images, like, so these images are represented with three colors like red, green, and blue. So we call them an RGB. So finally, your image is now going to be represented with a 3D matrix if it is a color image, where each of these matrices are having a certain order with respect to the number of rows and number of columns which you represent in the form of a pixel. And there will be three channels with respect to the three channels, what you call them as a red, green, or blue. So if computer looks for this particular images, even this small part will be read as these set of numbers in the computer. And when we take these numbers to process with any of these models, like we can utilize these numbers for carrying out different tasks of images or computer vision, such as image classification or so. So, but when we talk about image classification, there are certain challenges with respect to the images. Like you see that now computer is going to see this image in the form of numbers. And if you change these numbers, like your image is going to change. So when we use this, these kind of representation of image for the image classifications, now this comes with certain types of challenges in that. So the first challenge is you can see the viewpoint variations, like that might be possible that is image is not taken from the front of the face, or you can have the rotation form of the images in that, but still that doesn't change the level of that image. In all these three cases, you can see in viewpoint variations, this image belongs to a single object, even like we are taking this image from different angles or so. And the second, there can be certain illumination conditions based on that these pixel values can change when we store these images in the computer. But ultimately, the label you cannot define that the label is going to be changed if we talk about image classification. Now there may be a scale variations, like you see in the middle of that particular part. A small boy with a laptop, or a big boy with a small laptop. You can say that in both the cases, your laptop or the boy classification remain the same. Then sometimes the image can be deformated. Certainly, you can take images at an angle where it can be deformated. There can be some background clutter over there, so it's really become very hard to classify in that case. Like you can see this cat is actually sitting over a particular cloth which looks like very similar to the cat skin. So it really become very hard to recognize from that side. Sometimes this occlusion can be there, like so the object is not as much clearly visible with respect to the background that we have here. So again, like there will be a challenge to classify what kind of image is that too. And sometimes we see that there is a lot of intra-class variations are available. For example, like we can have a different kind of chairs. If let's suppose you want to create a model which is for the furniture classification, or a chair classification, or a table classification, we know that in respect to the chair also, like there could be many different form of chairs are available. So due to these variations, we can say that image classification is a challenge, especially when you want to do this image classification with the help of machine or even with the computer. And especially like when we use machine learning approaches or the deep learning approaches to solve these image classification problems, now you need to face all these challenges. Now, what I did is I try to give the same perception with these small images. So what I have done is I have created this matrix. This matrix is a 9x9 matrix. So you can imagine that image is going to have total 81 number of pixels in that. And by having different values in that, like you can print the value of that image. So like you can see, this is the unit digit number 1. And this can be represented by these set of values when you represent them into a 9x9 matrices. So this is one, you can say that, and you can easily say that this image has the label 1. Now, if I change these values, you see that if I change these values and I try to print again, like you see that still this image label is going to be the same. Only thing that has changed is the color coding. So previously, like we have a different colors for the label 1, and here we have a different image with the same label, but the color coding has changed completely, and that is just because that we have changed these numbers. So you see that the matrix which we used to represent the previous image is now completely replaced with some new numbers like 255 or 100 or something like that. Now, sometimes you can see these rotations also. Like this, it's not very clearly visible because of that the small resolution image. But when you use a dense resolution image, you can see that this is an image of 1, but it has been taken with some rotation angle, you can call it. But again, I can say that this is an image of 1, and I can try with some other combinations also where I can plot these images at a different part of this image box. So this is at the left top corner, and on the right side, we can say that this is at the, you see, on the right bottom corner. But when we look all these 5 images, now all these 5 images must be labeled by a label 1, because all these images are representing the label image 1. But when we take these numbers for the classification with any machine learning, you can see that these numbers are changing with respect to each of these representations. Like previously, we were only having 0 and 1 in these matrices, but next time we are having these 255 and 100 in these matrices. And third times, like these 0 ones can be misplaced, like they can be at a different places. So this matrix is completely different from the first matrix. You can see that. And similarly for the other 2 combinations, like where we can see this left top corner or the right bottom corner. So these set of values are changing. But when we try to make any classification models, what we want that this classification model must be invariant with respect to these changes. And if you feed any of these images into that model, it should predict it as a label 1. This is what is our objective, but because of these different conditions of the images, like this become one of the challenge of image classification in that. And this is one of the reason that why we cannot use these fully connected network to solve this, because whenever we process data through a fully connected networks, you have to convert this 2-dimensional representation in the form of a vector where you can feed it into the input layer, and then that particular data can be processed through these sequential layers such as hidden layer 1, hidden layer 2, and finally you can get an output on the output layer where you can get the label of that particular image. But as you can see that when you map this 2D data into this vector, and because these matrices are now having different values at different locations, so every time you will get a different representation or a vector representation for that. And now this network has to learn all these types of vector representations to get the similar label, which is of label 1. So these challenges, what we have seen with respect to the images, now these challenges become problematic when we use these fully connected layers for the image classification. The second reason for that, like, so you see that if I'm using this 9x9 image, so I will have 81 input features in my input layer, and these 81 input features are going to connect few number of neurons in the hidden layers. So that basically give you the number of parameters. You can compute these number of parameters with respect to the weight matrix and the biases with respect to the hidden layer. But if you increase this resolution, means if you increase the resolution of this particular image, or let's suppose you are representing that image is 900 x 900, or let's suppose 90 x 90 pixels, you can imagine the length of input vectors, and that can really explode the number of parameters within that network. So these are the 2 reasons. Because of that, we can say that these fully connected networks are not good fit for image classification problems, or the problems that we generally see with respect to computer vision. So to deal with such kind of challenges, people try to come up with different kind of solutions, and they gave us a concept of what we call a convolution. Now, convolution is not a new concept that really exists in our world since centuries. And it's a kind of concept which is generally used to extract features from your input samples. So can we extract these features from our input samples or so that? So previously, like before the invention of this deep learning, or where we can call that end-to-end deep learning, so we used to have some hand engineering process with the help of these convolutions, and these convolutions help us to extract features from that image. So what could be the features of an image? Like if I say that this is my image, then what could be the feature of this image? How we can think like so? So the answer is very simple. Like if you have seen some sketching tutorials where people try to teach you that how to do sketching or how to do painting or all these things. Like they always start with a very basic, by drawing a very basic form of the images, like the straight line, horizontal line, angle line, the curvical line, or something like that. So we know that when we talk about an image, these horizontal, these vertical lines could be the initial features of an image, and if we can extract those features, and we can utilize those features to define the class of a particular image. Like in this case, if I have to classify this image, I can easily say that this particular image is formed by 3 types of lines. One is vertical and 2 are the horizontals. You can see that. So with respect to these features, I can easily classify them. Instead of that, if let's suppose I have the image of 2, let's suppose, so instead of this, let's suppose I have the image of 2. Now this 2 has one horizontal image, and there is certain curvical features are available in that. So that basically differentiate between these 2 types of image. One is for the level 1 and second is one for the level 2. Now these features can be extracted by some hand-made kernels or handmade filters, and these filters we generally used to use before, like I said, 2010. And after that, like nowadays, we are using some end-to-end deep learning approaches to learn those filters also. And if you want to have, or if you want to experience those filters, like there is a very nice tutorial available on this particular URL link, where you can find these filters and you can easily see them working. So like let's suppose this is one image, and you can see this small image. When you zoom it will be represented like that, and each of these pixels is now being represented with one value ranging between 0 to 255. So this face is now being represented with these set of numbers in the memory or in computers. Now, if I want to extract the features of this particular face image, I can utilize certain filters, and this is something what we call convolution process. Now, these convolutions are actually help us to extract these features from that images. So, as I said, like before 2010, we used to have some handmade kernels through which like you can extract those features, and there is a list of these handmade filters through which like you can extract these features. Like, so you see that, like let's suppose if I want to know the horizontal line, these bottom ovals, I can easily get that. So you see, if I am applying this filter over this image, I will get this output. Now in this output, I can easily extract all the horizontal images from this particular input image. I can change these filters one by one. Like if I want to know the vertical lines, I can change it. So now you see that I am extracting the vertical lines from that images using this filter. So this is the filter which can extract the vertical lines. This is the filter which can extract horizontal line. And then similarly, like you can compute some blur features, you can compute some sharpness features. You see that? So you can do that. And these are all the handmade features. And every times, like when you use these filters with that images, you will get a new output with certain new kind of features exist in that. Now we can utilize these features for further processing, and then we can look for the page classification and so on. So this is one website where we can see the application of these filters, and we can see the effect of these filters of getting output of different image output. So, but the question was that this process, like this handmade process, was not end-to-end deep learning process. So the answer came in the form of convolution neural network, where we want to do this whole process as an end-to-end deep learning, where instead of using these handmade filters, can we learn those filters which can actually extract features from that input, and then we can utilize those features for classification also. So that gave the rise of a new kind of architecture in the deep learning world, which nowadays become the state of art for computer vision problems, and that what we call convolution neural network. Now, when we talk about convolution neural networks, we use different kind of layers in that, and these layers are mainly mainly defined as a convolution layer. And certainly this layer comes with certain customizable parameters. We'll talk about them, like with or without padding, and some strides is there or something like that. Then we use some nonlinear activation layer. Generally, we use ReLU as a nonlinear activation function there. So we call it as a ReLU layer. Then we use a max pooling layer in that. The job of max pooling layer is just to reduce the size of your input space. And finally, we use flatten layer and fully connected layer. The job of fully connected layer is doing for the classification, whereas the job of convolution, ReLU, and max pooling layer is for the feature extraction also. So we will see all these layers one by one and how these operations are basically carried out. So the job of convolution layer is, you can say, is just to look for the feature from that image and extract that features. So how we can do that? So basically the convolution operation is defined in terms of deep learning world. It can be defined as a weighted sum of filter with the input. So if, let's suppose, if this is your input and this is your filter, so what you have to do, we will do is element wise multiplication with these, and finally we do the sum of this. So this whole expression can be explained here. The central pixel is nothing but the element wise multiplication that you are getting from here. The center element of the kernel is placed over the source pixel, and the source pixel is then replaced with the weighted sum of the itself and nearby pixels. So this 4 will be multiplied with 0, then 0 with 0, 0 with 0, 0 with 0, 0 with 1, 0 with 1, 0 with 0, 0 with 1, and 2 with -4. That results as a -8, and this becomes the output. Now here you see this looks like to be a static filter where we have these fixed values available, and finally we can get the output here. But when we make this process an end-to-end learning process, we replace these values with certain weight parameters which are learned during the training of network. So these numbers can be replaced with these weight parameters, something like that. And now each of this filter comes with one bias parameter also. So it is 9 weight with 1, and you will get 1 output from this. And during the back propagation, especially when we train this network using supervised trainings, we can adjust these weights to extract the right set of features to get the minimum loss on the output. Now this kind of convolution you can imagine with a grayscale image, where generally your image is represented with a single channel. So here, like if you count these number of rows, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. This image is said to be 7 cross 7 cross 1. And this image is said to be a grayscale image because it has only a single channel. So as I said, like the image can be represented as a grayscale image or a color scale image. So color scale image is generally going to have three channels RGB, whereas the grayscale is only having one channel, and this is an operation that you are performing with a grayscale image. But when you do it for the color scale images, we know that the image is now going to have 3 channels. So let me reduce the size. So these are the 3 channels with respect to the three channels that you can see with respect to them. This is for R, this is for G, and this is for, let's suppose, B. And with respect to each channel, you are going to design a 3 cross 3 channel. So with respect to each of these channels, we'll have 3 cross 3 filters. And when you compute the output of these 3 cross 3 filters, now you will have these 27 values with 1 bias parameters to compute the final. So these 3 channels will be mapped with respect to these 3 cross 3 channels corresponding to each of these color channels. We do these element wise multiplication, and finally we do the sum. For example, this 10 is the output when this second feature map is used with these 3 channel values one by one. And finally, we do the weighted sum. So this is the output. And in this case, actually, we are trying to extract 2 different features. So this each filter is correspond to get 1 feature. So this is the feature 1, you can call it. And this is for the feature 2. So each filter is going to give us a 1 feature, and that is through 3 channels of the images RGB. So color images will have the 3 channels. So we'll use the 3x3 channels with respect to them, and each of these output will be the result of that. So that's how you perform these convolution. And this convolution is actually customized in many ways. So when you perform these convolutions, you see that whenever we have some input size, we give us, you can apply some convolution with K cross K kernels. And here you can give some number of channels. So let's suppose your input size is H cross W cross 3, if it is a color. Then your output is going to be have H dash cross W cross C, where C is the number of feature maps that you are getting. So this is becoming your output size. And when you perform these convolutions, there are certain parameters that you can play with. Like one is like, let's suppose you see that this particular size will get changed if you apply a convolution over there. And if you want that this size not change, then you can add these extra zeros around this image size. So originally this image is of 5x5, but as you add a 0 padding here, this image has become a 7x7. You see that. And when you rule this filter actually, so this is something like the very first operation that you perform here. So this filter is performed here. Then you stride, take next and next. So next time when you take this stride, you can again have a choice to take a stride of 1 or a stride of 2, something like that. So if you take a stride of 2, we can make a shift of 2 instead of 1. So there are parameters like we can play with whenever we perform the convolution. The very first parameters we call it as a padding. And padding is a process to add zeros around the image, extra zeros, extra 0 columns or extra 0 rows around that image. The second parameters we call it as a stride, which defines the step taken by to perform the convolution operation, that how much cells you will stop to compute the next convolution layer. So that is something defined by stride. Based on these 2 parameters, generally we define the output volume, which is defined by the input minus K, which defines the size of your kernel, plus 2p divided by S plus 1. And similarly, we can compute the width of that too. So that is again W minus K plus 2p upon S plus 1. So these are the 2 formula that we use to compute this output volume size here. Generally, the role of convolution is to extract the feature. And we always expect this height and width must not change whenever you apply the convolution. So we use this padding to mitigate that effect, the reduction in size. So if you are using a 3x3 kernel, we can use padding as a 1. We are using 5x5 kernel, then we can use padding as a 2. If you use these combinations, you will get this similar kind of output, the output volume by taking a stride is equal to. So with these settings, you can extract the features from the convolution layers one after another. Guys, are we good? Do we have any question here? Hello? Hello? Am I audible?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. You.
Yes, sir. You are
Continue,
audible, sir.
sir. Please.
Is it going fine? Do we have any question here?
No, sir.
Okay. So this is the very first operation that you perform, and this is the first layer that we see in a convolution layer, which is what we call a convolution. Sometimes we use padding and sometimes we do not use padding. If we use padding, that means you'll get the similar type of similar size of output volume. If we do not use padding, your output volume will be the reduced size. Like, so if you are using some higher size input, then definitely you'll get the reduced size. The next is what we call a ReLU, which is a nonlinear activation function, and this is generally used to introduce nonlinearity in the function. So this function, and the nonlinearity is required because image are the most nonlinear form of the data. So we know that ReLU is a nonlinear activation function whose definition is defined as fx is equal to max of 0x, which means that it always passes the positive numbers. So if you try to represent it in the form, this ReLU is represented like this. So every time when you see a negative number as an input, that negative value is being actually suppressed. So you see on the output, you are getting only 0. And the positive values are passing as it is. So 15 to 15, 20 to 20, 18 to 18, they are passed as it is, whereas the negative number is being suppressed to 0. So this is the activation function which was invented in the year of, I think, 2006, and this was the one of the reason that lay the foundation of deep learning neural networks, or you can say that gave the breakthrough to develop these deep neural networks, where we can see hundreds of layers in the deep learning or the neural network. But the job of this ReLU is to introduce nonlinearity. And this nonlinearity help us to learn the pattern of the data. And images are the most nonlinear form of the data. So this ReLU and any other nonlinear activation function which can support this nonlinearity can be utilized here. But since this inception, this become the state of art that is used in many deep learning architectures. So we use ReLU as a nonlinear activation function in convolution neural network. After that, we use max pooling, which is basically introduced to reduce the size of your input volume. So we have seen that initially, like when we talk about the size of the image, it is represented in the form of a resolution. So like when we talk about resolution, so number of rows and number of columns. And if you use an high definition images, generally these number of rows and number of columns are very much high. And this basically puts a constraint over the computational complexity of the input. So to overcome this, what we expect to reduce the size of this input volume. And for doing this, we introduce a new type of layer in convolution network. That is what you call a max pooling layer. And the job of max pooling layer is nothing but to reduce the size of your input volume. So this is again follows as a filter way. But it does not have any kind of parameters. It takes like, so if you use like 2x2 filter, so it takes this 2x2 input, and out of this 2x2, it will give you a single output. And this stride we generally use here is 2. And if we are using a max pool, then we can simply take the maximum out of these 4. So in this case, like 2, 3, 2, 1.5, we take this 3 because 3 is the maximum number out of these 4. Next time when we look the next 2x2 numbers, so here again we take the maximum, which is 5.0, and similarly here again we take the maximum, which is a 7.0. Now there are different versions of max. The pooling layers are available. Like instead of max pool, we can utilize with average pooling also. So instead of selecting a single unit, which is the maximum out of these 4, we can take the average of these 4 numbers and we can give the output here. So this is a kind of average pooling we can use. And similarly, instead of using max pooling, we can also look for the minimum pooling. So instead of selecting the maximum numbers, you can also look for the minimum. So in that case, this 1.5 will be the output of that result if you are using a minimum. But in recent time, max pool is becoming more popular. And there is one reason of doing this, that whenever we talk about this max pooling, you can easily see that it is basically deactivating the 75% of activation whenever you perform this max pooling operation. By 75% deactivation, what I mean is that when you take these 4 inputs, you are only taking one output and discarding the 3 values. That means you are doing 75% deactivation. So all these outputs are the output of one neuron, And to take it to the next layers, what are you doing? You are taking the output from the single neuron, you are deactivating the 3 other neurons. So that means you are deactivating 75% neurons in the previous layer. And this is very much similar to the effect that we used to have with the dropout layer, which we generally use to to overcome the problem of overfitting. Those who have the idea of deep learning, I hope they know it. And down the line, I'll talk about that too. So basically, because of that's the reason, now this layer is now most popularly used for the deep learning architectures, because it supports the effect of dropout, and it sometimes help us to overcome the overfitting issues also. So this is the third type of layer that we see. So we have seen convolution layer, then we have ReLU layer, and then we have expooling layer. Now these 3 layers are mainly used for feature extraction. And when we talk about the convolution neural networks, we can utilize these layers in a redundant form, one after another, and finally, when you get this volume as an output, after that, I showed you, this is the architecture of convolution, this one. So here, like this depth is basically going to represent the number of features. And here you can put a flattened layer, which can convert this volume in the form of a vector, which can be feed into a fully connected layer for the classification. So this is the part of convolution. And this convolution is basically used to extract the features. So you can say the job of convolution is featureization of that image. And after that, you can add the fully connected networks, very similar to that. The job of that network is to do the classification. So this becomes a very straightforward architecture of convolution neural network for image classification. Down the line also, I can show it to you. You see this. So now with this becomes the complete state of architecture of any convolution neural network. This is the input that you give. You apply a certain convolution layer with ReLU, then you apply a pooling layer. You can apply these combinations in redundant form one after another. So you see this convolution, then ReLU, max pooling, convolution, ReLU, max pooling. And finally, like we can apply this flattened layer, and then fully connected layer, and finally we get down. The job of this convolution layer is to extract feature, or you can call this is a featureization. And the job of this fully connected layer is to do classification. So this becomes the state-of-art model or the architecture which we generally use for image classification problem. Certainly, sometimes we use it for the object detection also. Are we good, guys? Hello.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Do we have any question here? In chat box. Are we good? Hello.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. So you see, this has become the architecture of convolution neural networks. Now let's talk about this dropout layer. Now this is the layer that we generally use to reduce the complexity of the model. So you see, a normal neural network is the one where you see these dense connections, where every unit in the previous layer is fully connected to the every unit in the next layer. So you see these dense connections here. Now, whenever you increase these number of layers, it increases the complexity of the model. We know that whenever we talk about this deep neural networks, every link is assigned with a byte, so it increases the number of parameters. And there is a say in machine learning or in deep learning that if you increase with the complexity, your model is tend to become overfit. So when we talk about the relation between the complexity and the error rate between the model. So as you increase the complexity, the error rate of the training data is reduces sequentially as you increase with the complexity. But the error rate of the test data is increased initially, but after a certain time, it started getting increasing. And this zone, we call it as a overfit zone. So complexity is good in terms of reducing the error with respect to the training data, but it's not good with respect to the test data. And sometimes it leads to the situation of overfitting. And this is not good for any ML model or any DL model. And overfitting is a situation where we say that the model performs well on the training data, but fails on the test data. Or you can say that that model gives better accuracy on the training data, but give poor accuracy on the test data. So we want a model which perform equally well on trained data as well as on the test data. So this is your test data and this is your trained data. So if you come back, like if you take somewhere here, you see that this model is performing equally well for both training and test, which means that you want to search in the sweet spot. And this spot can be found by reducing the complexity of your model. So if that model is complex, that means you are getting a very low training error, but a high test error. But if you reduce the complexity, you can get this point somewhere where you are getting equally well or approximately similar kind of test and train accuracy in both the cases. And this can be done by reducing the complexity of your model. By reducing the complexity, I mean reducing the links. And there is a way of doing this and what we call a dropout. So we can introduce a dropout layer in our network, which can basically drop out few connections where you can see here. Like if I'm using a dropout with 50% probability, that means if there are 5 neurons in the previous layer, randomly I will switch 50% neurons, switch off 50% neurons. That means the output of these neurons will not forward it for the next layer. So you see that if these 2 neurons will get switched off here, we are not passing any of the output to any of the next unit. Similarly, for the next layer also, if we are making a 50% switch off, so these 3 neurons will get switched off. We are not passing the output to the next. And the similar, you can look for the next layer also. And when you do so, you see that this dense network is now being converted into a sparse network, or you can say that this complexity is now being reduced to a simpler form. And whenever you do so, you are somehow able to reduce the overfitting within that network. So the job of dropout layer, especially in the form of deep learning neural network, is to reduce the overfitting or to make a simpler network that can sustain against both train and test data equally well. Now there is another way of doing this. So when we say the complexity, so generally in ML or in DL, we say that data is a food to these models. And if your model is complex, you need more and more data to feed it. And if you have less number of training examples for a complex data, your model tends to get overfit. So sometimes we need to generate more training instances to sustain against this complexity. And thanks to some data augmentation techniques, especially using image data, so we can generate more training instances like this. So as we have seen, like there are certain characteristics of these images which we generally study as a challenge, but these characteristics can also be utilized to generate more training instances like this one. And this is something what we call data augmentation. And again, the job of data augmentation is to reduce overfitting. So you have a single image, this image of a 6, and by applying some data augmentation techniques, you are generating more training instances of the same label. So still this image will be labeled as a 6. And what we are doing here, we are applying some image processing techniques. We are applying some image processing methods so we can get different form of this image by rotation, by blurring, by cropping, shearing, zooming. All these kind of image processing techniques we can apply to get more training instances. So with this single instance, you will be able to generate these 20 more instances of one image. And all these 20 instances will be labeled by the label 6, because this is the image of a 6 digit. So with single label, now you are able to generate more training instances. That means now you are able to get more training instances which can sustain against the complex architecture of the model. and somehow that complex architecture, when it is fed with more data, that can reduce the overfitting. So there are two methods we generally use to handle the overfitting issue for the image classification data. One, the introduction of these dropout layers, and second, the data augmentation. Now these dropout layers are basically introduced in the fully connected form. So you see that. So if you have to introduce these dropout layers, you can introduce them here. You see here, you can introduce here. In the convolution part, we generally do not introduce these dropout layers because we are using this max pooling. And whenever we do this max pooling, we are automatically shut down 75% activations. We are only forwarding us 25% activation from the previous layer. So the dropout effect can be achieved through max pooling layer automatically. So that's why we do not use dropout layers in the convolution part. These dropout layers are only used in fully connected part. Hello.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Now let us see in one simulation that how this whole CNN process actually happens. So this is a very nice GitHub repository available to explain the working of a convolution neural network. And this particular problem, you have 10 different classes. Now these classes, one is boat, you see that. The second is ladybug, third is for the pizza, then bell pepper, then there is a school bus, then there's a koala, then this espresso, okay, red panda is there, orange is there, car is there, something like that. So we have total 10 different classes. Now in this particular problem of image classifications, we have defined a convolution neural network with certain convolution layers, max pooling layers, convolution layer, max pooling layers, and finally we have this output layers where we can get this softmax out. So let's suppose if I feed this this school bus input image, and if I want to know that how this convolution is actually being achieved, so I can click on this particular image and you see that this is how this convolution is get computed. So this window, this 3x3 window is rolling over this image and it is computing the values one by one with respect to all these three channels, red, green, and blue. And it is capturing the values and storing here. Now on the first layers, we are using 10 such filters. So we can click on any filters and we can get these values here. This is the first phase of convolution that we are extracting features from the three different channels of the input image. Now on the very first layer, we are using 10 such feature maps, which means that these features map will able to get 10 different types of features of that input image. You can click on any and look for the computation. Now after that, we are applying a ReLU, and we know that ReLU is basically a nonlinear activation which only pass positive numbers. So you see that here, if you hover over this image, you can see the value of these pixels. And this is the definition of ReLU, that is always look the maximum between 0 and the input. If the input is positive, it will process that. If the input is negative, that it will suppress and only pass to the 0. And if you look for this color coding, this orange color is actually representing negative numbers and this blue color is representing positive numbers. So here you see most of the pixels are negative in numbers. So on the output, you are getting either positive or blue. Because either white or blue. White represents 0 and blue represent positive numbers. So this whole negative pixel values are actually being suppressed through this value, and that introduces a non-linearity in it. Now on the other side, if you look for the second feature map that extract the positive numbers, so you see in this ReLU, we are getting all positive numbers from it, and you can extract those features. Then after that, we are applying another convolution, and this can happen like you can apply convolution value and then convolution value, or you can introduce pooling after the convolution value. These kind of customizations are possible when we talk about these convolution neural networks. So let's talk about max pooling. So max pooling is basically this. It takes 4 values and passes only 1. So this takes 2 cross 2 filter size. And with respect to that, it always passes the maximum out of 4. So in this case, if 0.26, 0.48, 0.42, and 0.41, the 0.48 will be the output. And you can get it. And as I said, that max pooling, the job of max pooling is to reduce the size of input. So if you give the input of size 60 cross 60, after max pooling, it has been reduced to 30 cross 30. So the job of max pooling is to reduce size. The job of convolution is to extract feature. Now, what is the benefit of having this is like when you reduce the size, now you have the liberty to increase the number of channels. In this particular simulation, you see that we are using the constant feature map, 10, 10, something like that, throughout the convolution layer. But now if you have reduced the size, like you see that you have reduced it to 30 cross 30. So you have the flexibility, like you can increase these filters from 10 to 20 or something like that, 32 or something. Because you can have the same number of computations with respect to the reduced size if you can increase the number of filters in that. So the general architecture of CNN, if you see in mostly cases, you always experience that in initial time, you have certain H, W and certain channel. When you grow deeper and deeper, your height and weights are reduced, means the size is being reduced, but the number of channels get increases. So initially you use a few number of channels, and there is no reason for that. The reason is only just to sustain against the computational complexity of the model. So initially, if your size is high, it requires more number of computations, so you should come up by less number of channels. But when you reduce the size, you have the liberty to increase the number of channels at the same number of computations. So in general pattern, you see that as you increase with the layers, your number of channels get increased and the size will get decreased. And finally, you will have the output layer where you can see the softmax computations. So you see. So if you pass this image, you are getting the high probability on this espresso, because that's that image. You are following this orange. You are getting the high probability on this orange. And similarly, you can look that different level of features have been computed at differently. And this is how you can look for the explanation of a particular CNN architecture. Are we good, guys? Hello.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Now let's see how you can build your own convolution neural network to solve a problem. So for doing this, what I am taking a problem of flower classification. So I have one folder which is named as the flower, in which I have 2 subfolders. One is the train and second is the test. In the train, I have 5 different subfolders with 5 different names, which are the 5 different names of 5 different types of flowers: daisy, dandelion, rose, sunflower, and tulip. This is daisy. You see, I have few number of images in here, and all these images are from the daisy. You can download this data from the Kaggle. Dandelion is there, and in all these images you can see that these images have been taken from different angle, different rotations, different illumination conditions, different colors, you see. And this is always good to have such types of images to train a versatile network. These images are from the rose, then sunflower. Okay, and there are certain images even in which you can't see any flower. Then tulip. So I have this data. This data is flower data, in which I have 2 folders. One we will use for the training and second we will use for the testing. Now, whenever we talk about any kind of convolution neural network, most of the job you have to done with this data preprocessing, where we have to pre-process your data that can be taken by this model. So for doing this, let's see. So as we have discussed, for any convolution neural network, you will see these types of layers. You will see the convolution layer, you will see the RALU layer, pooling layer, flatten layer, dropout layer, fully connected layer. So for all these kind of layers, you can use a TensorFlow architectures, and in the TensorFlow Keras layers, you can look for all these types of layers. So this dense is a module which will give you the facility to create dense layers. Dropout, that will give you the facility to create dropout layer. Flatten, that is used to flatten your input volume in the form of a vector. Then the convolution layer and the max pooling layer. So these are the different kind of layers that we want to use. Then we know that every time when you use a deep learning networks, you need an optimizers to train it. And the very popular optimizers that we use is an ADAM. This become very popular in recent times. This is an extension of gradient descendant, where you see adaptive learning rate as well as adaptive gradient both. And we will use this very nice function available in this Keras preprocessing.image, which is an image data generator that has the capability to do this image augmentation. So through this particular functions, we will be able to create many training instances as per our requirement. So the different kind of functions we can apply in that. Rotation, sharing, cropping, zooming, these kind of functions we can apply with certain level of probability, and we can generate more number of training instances when it's required. So you need to import all these library packages, all these packages with respect to of creation of convolution neural network. Whereas these packages are very common. Every time when you create any machine learning project, you need this NumPy, Pandas, Matplotlib, and so on. And these are the 4 common packages you always import to do basic kind of stuffs. Now here I am defining my model. You see that. So my model is going to have this kind of form. You see, I have an input. So I have to define the input size first. What is the size of input which is taken by my input? Second, I will define some convolution layer, then pooling, convolution, pooling, and some flatten layer and fully connected layer also. So I can define my model here, and this can be generated by calling this sequential class, which is again imported through this Keras.models. Now this sequential class help us to create sequential models. So we'll first create the object of this sequential class you see here. And with the help of these objects, we can add layer by layer. So the very first thing that we are adding a convolution layer with 32 filters with a filter size of 3 cross 3. Whereas my input size is 64 cross 64 cross 3. And this 3 is for the color images. So this is going to be my input size. Like in my pic, you can see this 28 cross 28 cross 1, because it is an image of a grayscale image, where this 28 cross 28 is showing the number of rows and number of columns in terms of the resolution of images. Whereas the model which I am defining here, it is going to take the color images. So the number of channels are 3. And the size of input image is going to be 64 cross 64. And this input is being processed by a convolution layer of a filter size of 3 cross 3 with number of feature map to 32 with activation to RALU, and we are using padding as the same. So you will get the similar kind of output as an output volume. So whenever you use this padding is equal to same, it will add extra padding to the input to get the similar size out. After that, we are adding a pooling. Then we are adding another convolution layer with the similar number of filters. You see 32. Previously we are using 32. Again we are using 32. Then next max pooling, next convolution, max pooling. So you see in this particular architecture, if I draw it, this is my input. I am using convolution, pooling, convolution, pooling, convolution, and pooling. So there are 3 iterations of convolution, pooling, convolution, and pooling. And in each of these cases, we are using 32 feature maps. So finally, at the end of also, you are having these 32 feature maps. This is against whatever I was talking. So down the line, we'll try to correct it. And after that, whatever the volume you are getting, you are using it through flattening. So that will convert that volume into the form of a vector, which you will add through a dense layer of 512 neurons. So after that, you are adding it to a flatten that will convert, and then you add it to a 512 neuron dense layer. Then we are adding a dropout layer with 25% of dropout, which means that only 75% activations will be forwarded for the next layer. Then we are adding another dense layer with 128 neurons. And because this problem is a 5-class classification problem, so finally we are adding an output layer with 5 sockets. So this is going to be the architecture of the convolution neural network, which I am defining to solve the problem of Flower classification. Now in this particular architecture, we can also generate the summary. So here you can see the number of parameters which are needed to be trained. So you see we have total 64 cross 64 cross 3. This is your input, and you are adding 3 cross 3 32 channels on the first convolution. So the output volume that will be generated is 64 cross 64 cross 32. And this is because that we are using padding as a same. Here's just a minute. Hello.
Yes, sir.
Okay, I'm sorry. So here we can compute the number of parameters that is need to be trained here, and these number of parameters with respect to them you can easily compute because it is a 3 channel. So with respect to these 32, which is going to be 3 cross 3 cross 3 cross 32 cross 32, and when you plus 32, because you have total 32 channels here. This is the number that you will get when you solve it. And these are the number of parameters between the first input layer and the first convolution layer. In the max pooling, there are no parameters, so we'll have 0 here. Then again, we are applying the convolution layer, which is with 3 cross 3 and 32 channels. So the total number of parameters will become 9248, 1049088656 6564 and 654. Now these parameters you can compute because like when you compute between 128 fully connected with 5, so you see that is 128 cross 5 plus 5, this become 645. And when you do the sum of all these parameters, so in your networks, there are around 11 billion parameters that need to be trained for this classification. And this makes this kind of model is really complex, and it required resources and data to get trained well. So this is the summary you can get by calling this this summary function for this object. Okay. Next thing, when we go for the training, we always need to set the optimizer. As I said, that Adam is become recent time more popular. So we are setting the learning rate to be 0.01. We can make it any. These are the values you can adjust while learning them. These all are hyperparameters, so there is no thumb rule to define what should be the exact value of them. You should try with different values, and whatever the value that is giving to a better efficiency, you can use it for the future use. So this is first, we are setting the optimizer, in this case Adam, and then we are calling this compile. This is always need to be called in TensorFlow because it creates the computation graph within the Tensor framework, and it also validates all the settings which you are defining for the model. When you run it, if there is no error, that means that the computation graph has been created within a Tensor framework and all the settings are valid. There is no mismatching with respect to the input and output shapes or so. Next is this data generating. As I said, this is a very nice function available in keras.preprocessing, and it is especially used with the image data where we can apply some data augmentation. So whenever we apply data, we always need to normalize it. So the very first thing that we are doing is we are rescaling it. We know that the pixel values are ranging from 0 to 255. So by dividing a 255, you can easily normalize your data. Then these are the augmentation techniques that we are trying to do. We are trying to make some shear range. We are trying to zoom the image by 10%, and we are trying to make the horizontal flip. We can add other properties also, like if you press the shift tab, you can find the other options you see. So feature-wise centers, sample-wise centers, and let me show you channel shift range, width shift range, height shift range, brightness range, shear range, vertical flip, horizontal flip, rescale, and all these properties you can use to create augmented images. That basically is a way to create more training instances to sustain the complexity of your model. And remember, all these techniques we only apply for the trained data. We do not apply it for the test data, because trained data is the one that we use for the training of the model, and test data we simply rescale it, or we can say to normalize it, so it can be processed by the model itself. Now, before doing this, we also need to resize our input, because the model what we have defined that takes the input of size 64 cross 64 cross 3. So while using this image data generator, we can do all these things, and while reading the images from the directory, we can actually resize the input image and convert it into a batch size. Now your data is ready and it can be fed to your network. So the model, whatever we have defined with these convolution and fully connected layers, when you train it for the 10 number of epochs, you see that we started with a training accuracy of 38.38 with a validation accuracy of 53.12, and gradually after 10th epoch, your training accuracy is around 76.58, whereas the validation accuracy is 65.4. And it seems to be a clear case of overfitting, where you see that your validation accuracy is poor as compared to training accuracy, and the difference is around 11%, which is not good. So what we say that your training and validation accuracy must be similar. If it is not similar, it approximately similar, we say that. So that the difference must not be more than 3-2%. And here you see the difference is around 11%. So this model, we can say it's a clear case of overfitting, and this is not good for any kind of modeling process. So we need to try it, we need to tune it, and there may be certain architectural flaw in it. There may be certain other parameters which you can tune. So let's try with a different approach. Okay, so here, like when you test it, even this model is not performing well, because I was trying to predict this image, which is of Daisy, but it has been predicted as Rose. And this is the reason, because the prediction accuracy on the validation data is not good. It is around 65%. That's not good in that case. So this model is not good, and the reason for this is that there may be some architectural flaw, there may be some training flaw, there may be some overfitting issues in there. So what we are doing, we are trying differently. We are trying to create more training instances by introducing more data augmentation. So instead of using only shear image and rotation images, what we are doing width shift range, height shift range, horizontal flip, zoom range also we have introduced. This help us to create more training instances in that case. And at the same time, we have made some changes in the architectures. So as I said, on the normal conventional CNN, initially you have H and W and C, and gradually what happens, your H and W reduces and channel is increases. That's exactly what I'm doing in the second architecture. I'm introducing similar kind of layers, first with 32 channels, then with 64 channels, then with 128 channels. So gradually I'm improving with the number of channels, because after every application of max pooling, the size get reduced. So when size get reduced, we have the liberty that we can increase the number of channels to sustain the computation. So this is the new architecture which I have introduced. And in the previous case, we have seen this model was suffered with overfitting issue. You see. So to handle this also, one thing that what we have done is we introduce more data augmentation. And at the same time, we introduce more dropout. So instead of using 0.25, now we are using 50% of dropout in that case. And other things remain same. We are not changing it. But you see that as you change with the number of feature map, your number of parameters also get changed. So previously, where your model was having only 11 million parameters, let me show you the history. Only the 11 million parameters, but now your model is with 43 million parameters, you see. And when you increase with the number of parameters, obviously your complexity will get increased. So you can introduce more dropout in that case. And at the same time, previously we were executing this model training for 10 epochs. Now this time we are executing it for 20 epochs. So we have increased this number of iteration to 20. And when you train this, we started with 42% accuracy with the validation accuracy of 50%. And after 20, we have achieved around 82% accuracy on training and around 68% accuracy on validation. Still, you see that we can say that the model is still overfit, and the reason is these number of parameters. So either you should introduce more number of layers in that, means you can introduce convolution to convolution and then pooling, or you can increase the dropout ratio here. So before this 512 also we can introduce one more dropout layer, and these things can help us to reduce this overfitting issue. But nonetheless, let's see for the prediction. So this time, like when we go for this prediction accuracy, it has been increased. Like from the previous case, it certainly get increased in terms of training as well as in terms of testing. And the reason may be by the change of the architecture and the number of epochs that you have increased in that case. And when you go for the prediction, so like if this time I'm trying to predict this dandelion, this image, and when I predict it, you see that it is predicting it correctly. So it is getting the dandelion output with highest accuracy. So this is how you can create your own convolution neural networks for image classification, guys. I hope this session is fruitful. If you have any question, please do let me know.
सर इसको शेयर करेंगे क्या इसकी PPT पे?
Yeah, I can share that. Hello.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, any question? Are we good?
Yes, sir, please.
So this is from my side. Thank you, guys. Thank you, Sri sir.
सर थैंक यू सर. सर थैंक यू सर. और सर मैं वार्म वेल करना चाहूँगा आपका. सर आपने जो हमें वैल्यूएबल इंफॉर्मेशन दी, जैसे सर आपने बताया बोर्ड ऑफ थैंक्स में बता रहा हूँ आपको सर, जैसे कि आपने बताया सर इमेज क्लासिफिकेशन के बारे में, और यू हैव टू डिस्कस अबाउट द डिफरेंट टाइप्स ऑफ चैलेंजेस इन इमेज क्लासिफिकेशन, and discuss about the building block of the neural networks, and what is the image and how it can be represented. Or there's two things of image representation. First one is matrix and the second is real numbers. And then after you have to tell about image, there's a two types. First one is grayscale and the second is a color scale. And then after, what are the challenges of the image classification? Or there's some neural networks techniques you can discuss in. And then you have to also discuss the Python languages. Thank you, sir. Thanks a lot for this valuable information for us, sir.
Thank you. There is one question asked from Sunita Chaudhary. Can it apply on satellite images? Yes, you can apply it. See, actually, whatever the problem that you see in computer vision, so you majorly classify these problems into 4 domains. Like first is the image classification, second is object detection, third is semantic segmentation, and fourth is instance segmentation. And every problem of computer vision can be mapped into a basic problem of image classification. So despite a type of image, whether it is an MRI image or it is a satellite image or geospatial image or it's a simple camera image, you can apply this CNN to any images. The only thing which is required to work with those images is the tuning part. And this is the hardest part that I must say about the CNN. Because you see, in this case also, we have designed this very simple neural network, CNN neural network, and even this network has around 43 million parameters. And this network has only these many layers, you see that. But nowadays, the networks, what we are seeing, what we are witnessing are having around 150 layers, 150 deep neural layer, deep layers. And if you compare the number of parameters with respect to them, you can imagine the number of parameters and the size of the networks. So the tuning part has become really tricky and the tedious job. You can apply them on any images, but I can say that. Okay. Sometimes the results will be degraded using randomization approach. So can we add some user-defined function? Initialization. You mean to say initialization? Dr. Khyati Nirmal? Hello?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, so when we talk about this initializations, there are methods for weight initializations. And see, deep learning is still a research field. And there are many things which are still unknown. People are trying. So everyone has his or her idea. He carried out
Yes,
experiment.
But sir, my question is that we are using the random approach now in CNN and in fast forward also. Sometimes you do that, we get the degraded performance. So is it possible in the like that we can define our function to to avoid that randomization things like that?
So nowadays our randomization, see, so are you talking about randomization in terms of weight initialization or in terms of architecture development?
In the architect, when we are defining architecture, we are adding some weight to our nodes na at that time.
So weight initialization, you are saying weight initialization, na?
Yes, yes.
So there are methods like, so I hope you heard about He normal and HE. Have you heard about this HE approach, He normal approach of weight initialization?
Sir, actually, I'm not getting your voice properly.
Am I audible now?
Yes, yes,
Hello?
sir. Yes, sir.
What I'm saying is that, have you heard about this He normal approach of weight initialization?
Beat initialization I have heard, but pitch approach I have not heard regarding that.
Let me show you. See, you can find a very nice article here, initializing neural networks.
Okay. Yes,
the
yes.
thing that you are saying. Okay. In this case,
Okay,
what
okay.
happened that generally what you do, you can initialize all with zeros. Let me show you the effect of all these. So this is AMNES dataset. I hope you all are very much aware about this AMNES dataset. And we have designed a very simple neural network with 10H value function with 4 hidden layers with one softmax output layer. So if you initialize all the weight with zeros and you try to train it, you say your network will not get trained and you are getting zero output on every layer because your weight value is 0. Then what you do, you try to initialize them with a constant number. Okay.
Okay.
Then also like you will get this kind of effect, or as soon as you increase with the number of layers, you see your weight output get shrinked. Output values are getting lesser and lesser.
Okay.
Then you can use standard normal Gaussian distribution initialization, that also. In that case also you see that because we are using 10H activation here, So in the 10H, you either get +1 output or -1 output.
Okay.
Okay, for the higher values of input. So you are getting either -1 output or +1 output. Other values are 0 in every day. So that's why the research is going on in this field. And recently, the new kind of initialization method has been developed, which is what you call a Xavier initialization.
Okay, sir.
And the extension of Xavier is HE. And you see that we are getting equal kind of distribution in every hidden layer, even though we are using 10H. And the approach is very simple. So every time when we use, so this is Xavier is also a kind of Gaussian distribution. So whenever we define a Gaussian distribution, it is defined by two things. One is the mean, second is the standard deviation. So mean, you keep it as a 0. The only thing that you can change is the standard deviation. So in the standard deviation, what we can do, we can utilize the number of layers in the previous layer. Okay, so this is the formula, you see that. So your variance become number of layers in the previous layer, number of neurons in the previous layer. The mean is 0, variance is 1 upon number of layers in the previous, number of neurons in the previous layer. Xavier has nowadays become very popular, and the upgradation of Xavier has become He. And in the He, what they are doing, they are using these two things. They are using number of hidden neurons from the previous layer as well as the number of neurons in the current layer. And instead of using only the previous layer information, they are using the current layer information. So the new initialization has become this one. And this is what we call He, normal. Okay. And this works really very well with ReLU. And one of the reason of working well with the ReLU is also, in the ReLU, what we do, we generally suppress the half of the part. We suppress the negative numbers now.
Yes, sir. In ReLU.
So to overcome this, we add 2 here. So that's why we are adding this 2 here. So in case of ReLU, if you are using ReLU, instead of using 1, use 2 here. See, this 1 is for the 10H. Okay.
Okay, sir.
I getting, so these kind of three. What I was saying is deep learning is a field where you have idea, you carried out experiment, okay, then you get some results. If these results are promising, you can validate those results and publish them. If not, then you can look for your idea, try to make little change in that and carry out another experiment. And this is all we are doing since last 10 years. And still this field, many things are unknown, and there are a lot of hyperparameter in the deep learning, and still we are in the search to get the proper architecture for each of the problems.
Okay,
I hope this makes sense.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much, sir.
You are welcome.
I got my time.
Yeah. So can we wind this session, Sri sir?
Yes, sir.
Okay, guys. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.